Social connectedness is one of them, and I don't think we value that enough.
All right. Well, it's a real pleasure to have Sandra Iuliano on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
It's so fun to speak with you. You've got a PhD in exercise physiology and nutrition. These are topics I am so passionate about, and you're really focused on bone. Another topic I'm super passionate about. And I want to start off with a really interesting paper that you had and you did on the role that dairy plays in bone health, specifically fractures, which was in the British Medical Journal, if I got correct. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about this study and what you found was most surprising.
Yeah, so we know like dairy, so that's milk, yogurt, cheese, not butter and not cream and not ice cream. Milk, yogurt, cheese. Yeah, sorry everyone. And it's associated with bone, but we'd never had data that showed it reduces fractures. So it was this kind of, we know it's got calcium and stuff. So we actually did a trial, and we did it in aged care, so with much older people. And the reason we did it there's a couple of reasons. One is they are constantly below recommended levels for calcium. So they were sitting around 600 milligrams. So looking at your own, I don't know, like in Australia, our recommended intake is 1,300. So it's like less than half. Their protein intake was around 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight, and we should be around 1 at least in terms of what's recommended. So all we did, so we had 60 homes, 7,000 residents, and what we did is we divided the homes, randomly divided, so half the homes received the extra milk, yogurt and cheese, and the other half had their regular menus. And we had dietitians that specialise in food service. They went in and they helped them modify the diet and modify the menu. So we did it so that whatever the residents liked, that's what was put on there. So if they liked cheese, more cheese got put in there. We fortified milk with milk powder. So we had a whole bunch of different ways of doing it, and we did it across the whole menu. And we did it for 2 years. And that was the key thing. Once it was up and running, we maintained this intake for 2 years. So at the end of the 2 years, they had maintained, and this is Australian servings, 3.5 servings on average a day for 2 years.
What does one serving look like?
Okay, so in Australia, one serving is 250 ml of milk, it's 40 grams of cheese, or it's 200 grams of yogurt. So I know in the US, for example, it's a little bit different to that. So depending on where you are, but that's what our servings were. And so
it's like a cup of milk and then maybe a couple of squares of cheese and a pot of yogurt, one or two pots of yogurt, more or less.
Yep. That's what you're doing. Yeah. And so what we found is they achieved 1.1 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, so just above recommended. The estimated average requirement for calcium is 1,100 milligrams, and they got above that. What we found, this is probably the big picture stuff, fractures were down by 33%, hip fractures were down by 46%, falls were down by 11%, huge numbers. And we had a subsample of residents that we did bloods, we did all these different measures. They had high resolution PQCT, so we can get a 3D image reconstruction of their bone. And what we found is that those that were having the additional dairy food, the recommended amount, they were not losing bone to any detectable level, whereas the others were losing about 2% per year, which is normal for that age. They stopped losing weight, they maintained the muscles in their arms and legs, they didn't become malnourished, so were able to maintain their nutritional status. IGF-1, which is a hormone that usually is associated with getting stronger and good protein, went up. The bone markers that tell us how quickly the bone's breaking down kept going up in the controls and stabilised. So we had this fantastic data that was helping us to perhaps explain why we saw this reduction in the fractures. So this is amazing. And it was just regular milk, yogurt, cheese, nothing special. You can go to a supermarket and buy it.
No supplements. This is just food.
Just food.
What was the age range?
So these are older adults, so the average age is in their 80s. So when you go to an aged care, the average age is like 87. So they ranged in age from 80s. That one of the beautiful women in the study, I had two. One was 100, and we have bone images of a 100-year-old woman. And the other one was, I had a beautiful lady who was 96, and she said, "Am I too old for your study?" But she was fantastic. So amazing.
What did the bone look like in the scan of the 100-year-old?
The interesting thing is the bones were quite varied in terms of, yes, some were osteoporotic, but some had kind of normal, low normal and normal. So again, we were talking previously about genetics. If you've inherited strong, good bones. Plus, the key thing with a lot of these people is they lived on the land, they had simple food, they grew up with milk, they grew up with dairy, they were physically active. They didn't exercise. Most of them were farmers and workers, so they were active all the time. And that's one of the key things, that they're not sedentary.
Yeah, they must have built up the bone while they were young and have good reserves, so that it was a lot in the bank that they could afford to lose some as they aged. It's possible. I love that this study looked at fractures, at fracture risk, because most studies on bone would go through bone mineral density. Let's make the bone strong. But really, who cares about a DEXA score, in my opinion? It's more, am I going to have a fracture if I fall? Exactly. It's like the cholesterol. Like, I don't care about a number, but am I going to have a heart attack? That's what matters more to me. And I love that. And it's incredible that fractures of the hip reduced by 46%. Yeah. And this is not exercise. This is just literally a little bit of food. And that's kind of mind blowing in that sense. So I wanted to ask a little bit about so you also said that they didn't lose bone. So they didn't gain bone, but they just maintained it, right?
Once you're old, it's almost impossible. Unless you're on an anabolic agent, which is a drug, you can't add bone on. So what you find when people get older is every time you've got a piece of bone, we dig holes, we refill it. We dig holes, we refill it. And that's just a normal process to keep bone healthy and repairing it. As we get older, sometimes there's a bit of an imbalance. So I dig a hole, but I don't fill it as much. Okay, I can't change that. But only drug may be able to change that.
What about, so I don't remember, Belinda Beck, we've interviewed her as well. She's brilliant also from that side of the world. And she's did the Lift More trial, many other hundreds, I guess, of other research papers. And it was mind-blowing. A lot of bone doctors and bone experts will quote the Lift More trial because through exercise, they were able to build bone. But I don't know the age group, but I know they had people with osteoporosis, severe osteoporosis, and managed to get them into the green. But do you know if she had the older adults, like 80s and plus?
Yeah, probably not in their high 80s like ours. But what you find is with bone, as I said, when we go through menopause, this is what we're all talking about, you have a certain number of holes in your bone. When we're quite old, we have this imbalance, so we don't put as much bone back as we remove. And so what tends to happen is when we hit menopause, so once we're getting to menopause, estrogen goes down, we dig more of those holes. So when you look at a bone density scan, everyone goes, oh, they lost 5% in the year post-menopause. It's because the bone, I've taken a photo, piece of Swiss cheese, has 10 holes in it. They go through menopause, that same piece of bone now has 40 holes in it because of menopause, because of lack of estrogen. So if I take the same photo of that bone, 10 holes, 40 holes, the bone density goes down really quickly, okay, just because it's got more holes in it. So with exercise, one of the things that we can do is we slow down the number of holes we dig. So
we can't replace the holes in our 80s?
The holes are there for a purpose. That's part of our repairing. The only way we can actually add more bone on is with anabolic agents. So now what they're doing, like PTH is one of them, they're starting to say, they used to you'd have to be on therapy, you'd have to fracture on therapy. Like, it took so long for people to get onto these agents. Their bones were so deteriorated, you almost couldn't repair them. Whereas now they're starting to think, oh, hang on, maybe we do it as first-line therapy.
Yeah. So what's interesting is Belinda Beck did her research with just exercise. She didn't want the estrogen piece interfering. She didn't take anybody with HRT. She didn't monitor their food or tell them what to eat. She really wanted to see the impact. And what you've done is like the other side as well. Let's see the impact of food, just these 3 foods, which is pretty kind of crazy, and not the others. And both of you have positive results. So then what happens when we combine the two of them? If you got people eating the cheese and then doing the impact exercises or lift weight training, whatever you did, what are and also actually I always forget to talk about the balance piece as well, because part of the game of a fracture, if we're looking at fracture, we're not looking at bone density, we're looking at fractures, then you just don't fall. That's the game.
And most fractures, like with ours, only one fracture didn't come from a fall, so most of it is falling. But on that note, my PhD was with children, right down the other end of the spectrum, and it was exercise and calcium with food again. And again, exactly what you just said then, my dream trial would be to put them both together with older adults. So with the children, we observed that at the arms, the wrists, we saw an effect of the calcium, and at the legs, the lower legs, we saw the effect of the exercise, and at the hip, we saw a combined effect of the two. So yes, if you've got the material and then you've got the stimuli, so you've got the calcium, we've got the stimuli, the exercise, put them together, we did see in children a greater result than each of them individually. So I think, yes, in that, I think we could do the same.
I don't see why not. But it was interesting, though, that how few people can build bone after 80 when they can build more muscle. Like muscle, there's never seemed to be any age limit to building muscle. Right?
Yeah. Muscle's very elastic and plastic. Plastic's probably a better word. So we've got an existing muscle, and what it is, we can increase the fibres in the muscle. And if I increase the fibres, the muscle gets bigger, hypertrophy. And so when you're younger, you can add muscle fibres on, but when we're older, we can make them bigger and smaller. And that's why I was just, as we were commenting earlier, you can build muscle because we can make a muscle fibre bigger even after menopause. So it's not just a done deal. Bone's a bit different. Bone's not that plastic. We can't just add bone when we want and get rid of it when we want. Whereas with muscle, I can grow it. I can grow it really quickly, make it bigger, and then as soon as I stop exercising, it gets small again.
Yeah, and that's muscle mass, but also, I imagine the strength and the power is what we really want too in older age, right?
With the mass comes the power, and it's also the neuromuscular aspect of it. So people can actually get stronger because they're triggering the muscle. So it's the nerve-muscle interaction. We're triggering the muscle. We can actually even get stronger without getting bigger because of that neuromuscular. You're telling more muscle to fire up, but then you get it also with the size. So there was some great work done in the 1990s with people in their 80s, and they were given supplements and exercise. Their increases in strength were in the order of 300%. And that was a New England Journal of Medicine paper.
What supplement were they taking?
No, it was actually the exercise that did it.
Oh, it was the exercise. So they showed supplements versus exercise. They didn't do them together.
So they did exactly what I did with the children.
Yeah.
Supplement alone, exercise alone, both together, nothing at all. And what they found, this is another interesting part, when they had the muscle, when they had the exercise and the supplement together, they ate more food. Whereas when they had just the supplement, what they did is, yes, they took the supplement, but they ate less food. So the combined is no different. No trigger to eat. If you give a person a supplement that's high in protein, they drink it, they don't eat their meal. And that's one of the issues with older people. It's like if you give them a supplement and you're trying to get them to eat it over and above their food, they've only got a limited capacity to eat, and something's got to give.
Yeah, so it was like a protein powder.
It was a protein oral, like a liquid drink. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yep. So interesting. There was one thing I wanted to ask you about the milk. You said the milk was fortified with powder. What does that mean?
So what we did is part of it is, so if I've got an older person, they can't eat a lot. And that was the thing. People don't realise that. It's about 2 kilograms of food. That's it. So if I've got low quality food in there, there's no room for the good stuff. So if they only drink 150 ml of milk, that's all they can do. If I add milk powder to that, mix it in properly, I've doubled the nutritional content, but I've got the same volume of drink. So we fortified it with milk powder. And so if they have porridge, they're now having their porridge with milk that's basically double the value.
Okay, so then you're fortifying it with more milk. And so they're going to, in the end, get more calcium or vitamin D or whatever else in milk.
Yep.
Okay. How would that compare to giving them a supplement, like a calcium supplement?
Okay, I give them a calcium supplement. They're not getting the protein.
Yeah. That would make sense.
So, and the other thing we also don't know, there's other nutrients in milk and cheese and yogurt. There's other nutrients as well. So there might be something to do with the combination of nutrients that have an effect that's different. But you're right, it's the protein plus the calcium. They were the two key nutrients that we measured, but there are other things in there, B2, B6, all the others that come with it as well.
Yeah, this is one thing maybe some people don't realize that, in aged care or nursing homes, whatever you want to call it, it is these older adults, they don't have much of an appetite. We lose their taste bud receptors, and they think about taste as well, right? And then maybe you even may leaning more to salting things and eating more sugar, and then your nutrition isn't on spot, and then you don't have the room anymore. And this is really quite vital for aging is to eat enough calories and to even get all the nutrients. And so what drives me nuts are those Ensure like bottles of nutrition. Have you seen those? They give older adults these, and it's full of sugar, and I don't know how effective that is, but I feel like somebody's going to come up with one that's a little bit
What we
healthier.
find over the short term, so someone, for example, comes out of hospital, supplements, and this is from the literature, supplements work. Helps them put weight back on, but it doesn't work over the long term because compliance falls off. So if we've got an older adult that's come from hospital, even to the home, even to their own home, and they're prescribed a supplement, one of the key things that we're looking at in terms of recovery is weaning them off the supplement and getting them back onto the proper food. So it's that real shift. It's got its job in the short term, but it doesn't work in the long term. So if you just leave them on there, and that's what happens, no one ever checks up. They're just left on these supplements, and we find them with the straw in it, in the cupboard still, so that they don't, you sort of lose, we call it flavour fatigue. People, if you have to have the same flavour day in, day out, you become quite fatigued with the flavour, and they get gastric problems. There's all these things. Short-term good, long-term, go back to food.
Let's go back to the dairy. So the big takeaway here was just by adding, I don't know if it was milk, butter, cheese, and yogurt. Is that what it was?
No butter, because butter doesn't have any protein in it.
Oh, okay. Just butter, milk, cheese, and yogurt.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Just by adding those in, 3.5 servings a day. And is that each or all together?
No, so that was the beauty of it. Which they chose was based on what they wanted. So it wasn't that you had 3 serves of milk or 3 serves, and that was the beauty of it. It was basically as long as they got that amount of protein and that amount of calcium from whatever combination they wanted, that was the beauty of it. It wasn't saying you must have, it's like, what do you like to eat? We're beautiful women, and when we asked what do you want, they said strawberry milkshakes. Right? So it's very much, if that's what they want, that's what you give them. And that was the beauty of it. So there was no prescription per se.
Yeah.
It was...
I was watching the presentation of the study that you were, I don't know, presenting at a conference. And so I saw that this was funded by a lot of dairy companies. So if somebody challenges you on that, what's the answer?
Yeah. So in actual fact, and this is the interesting thing with this, and it is challenged, and I'm going to be 100% because we got no government funding. It went in 5 times and never got funded. They were dairy research foundations. So they're research foundations that get a levy from milk sales, so it has to go through the same peer review process. You have a contract, they're not allowed to say I can't publish or whatever I publish. If it was a negative result, I'm allowed to publish. So the university owns that data. The only industry involvement was, if you look at the actual paper, is Fonterra, who provided the money for the food. They provided the food. That was it. But they didn't dictate you must have, they didn't even dictate it had to be their products. Mm-hmm. So if, for example, we had a home that had a lot of Italian residents and they liked a certain cheese, like they like bocconcini and mozzarella and cheeses like that, they don't have that in their range, but we could purchase them anyway. So there was no, you must buy our products. They just basically provided the funding and we were able to buy whatever we needed.
Okay. And also if there were results didn't come out the way expected or they paid for, then you still can publish that. That's correct, right?
The data is owned by the university, and part of the contract is that they have no say in what is published or what is not published. So, for example, sometimes drug companies, if things aren't good, they can pull a study, they can just stop it, and therefore that data never goes to publication. We went through the whole process, and they had, and the beauty of it is, if you imagine, we've done this trial, we've got no idea what's going to happen in terms of with the data. All the data goes to our statistician who's in Sydney, which is an hour and a half flight away in another capital city. All we give them, if you know with data, you're giving them zeros and ones. Okay, that's all they get, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. So they've got no idea which group's which. Mm-hmm. So they just analyse the data completely blind to what's going on. And they come back and they go, oh, look, group 1, this happened. Group 0, this is what happened. And then we go, oh, look at that. Group 1 is our intervention group. Whoa. So there's no manipulation of data. There's none of that. And the first time it went to publication, that was the first criticism. And that's always going to continue to be a criticism. And I'm happy to wear that because I know that the integrity of the data, how we did it, we even had to keep. So the staff that did the intervention, the actual helping with the chefs, could never be in a home when our people that went in and did the testing were there. We had to keep them completely separate. So they couldn't go to the home and go, oh, look, she's here. This must be an intervention home. So they were blind.
Okay,
all of those people were blind to what was happening. They would have to go in at a separate time. We kept them all separate. And then the data is 0, 1, 0, 1. Yeah. So that all goes to the statistician, and then they unravel, do their magic. So it was as rigorous, and it went through a major peer review process, and the paper went through a huge peer review process. It went to some of the best journals in the world, and it got reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. It wasn't a straightforward thing. If you had said to me, this is the effect you'll get, I would have gone, my God, really? But it is what it is. That's the data. But then we've got that other data. We've got the bone density. We've got the bone structure. We've got the serum. We've got all this other data to support the mechanisms of that association. So it was, it was relieving.
Super interesting. I know somebody's going to ask me about that. That's why I was like,
no, that's fine. I get it all the time, and it's a completely fair comment. It's a shame that, for example, when pharmaceutical support is provided, there is no question.
Yeah.
People don't say, oh, look, that's that company. Whereas as soon as and the reality is that the amount of money that's available is so limited, we had to get money from 7 different countries just to run the trial.
Wow.
And so we went to 7 different research foundations and consortiums basically in our hands saying, we can't make this. And we actually had a deficit. So we actually did it with a deficit because we knew and we assumed we'd be funded by our national government agency, and we weren't. So it went in 5 times, we were never funded. So it's getting funding for food is difficult.
So then why would a company want to fund this if they can't put their name on it and it's my type of cheese and this is the best?
That was the whole purpose of it. We use generic so that if I walk into a supermarket and there's product X and I've got product A to Z, basically it's just milk, so it shouldn't be a difference between them.
No, it shouldn't. I would imagine a company will say, I don't want to give you money if it doesn't show that my product is the best.
Well, we were very lucky that we did have a company that was happy to give it a go, really. None of us know. Like you hypothesize it's going to work, and that's the thing. So you've got all this data around that's showing, bone density goes up, and it goes up in these older people. And we know if people are deficient, it's got the capacity. If someone's not deficient, if they're consuming 4 glasses of milk a day, giving them an extra glass is not going to change anything. But these people were so low, they were getting 1 serving of dairy a day, which was 25% of what they should be getting. So if you've got people who are deficient, they're going to get better. Key thing though, and this is one of the things, is they were vitamin D replete, which means their vitamin D levels were okay. Because we know if vitamin D is low, maybe we wouldn't have seen what we saw. So it's important that's looked after. And then it's out of the equation. It's not going to influence, because if some are deficient and some aren't, then it could be their low vitamin D that makes them less balanced, that makes them fall, that makes them fracture. So that was a standard across the board. And so the only kind of intervention was the dairy over and above it.
I want to understand I can understand how dairy or calcium or the vitamin D or all the nutrients inside these foods can help build bones or make them stronger. But how does it stop someone from falling? Because I can see the fracture. It's like, okay, well, the bones are strong, so they're not going to fracture. But you had an 11% decrease in falls. Yep. And what's the association?
Yeah, no, and again, we had bone density. When we do a bone density, we do a whole total body, so we can get body composition on these people. And so what we observed is those that had, if you've got not enough protein to survive on, where do you take it from? You take it from your muscles, because that's the biggest store of them. So what we found is those in the control group that were about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, they lost muscle in their arms and legs. And then the people that were in the intervention group had 1.1 gram per kilogram body weight, they maintained their muscle. So what we've done is, as people age, and if those things are going down, their risk is going up. So what happens is, in a sense, what we've done is we've halted the decline by providing adequate dairy, milk, protein and calcium, but that risk continued to go up in our control group. So it's sort of saying it's not an inevitable thing. You don't necessarily have to lose muscle. You don't necessarily have to lose that amount of bone by ensuring, in our case, they were having enough protein to maintain their muscle and enough calcium to somewhat maintain their bone.
So you think that the decrease in the falls is because people just didn't lose their muscle mass and they were capable of, I don't know, lifting their leg over the stair high enough so they don't trip.
Like we know with exercise, the benefits like completely outweigh protein, right? Absolutely. So if we had to put exercise in there, we could have had these amazing benefits. But it's more, the more muscle they lose, the weaker they become, the more likely they are to fall. Versus here's a person with muscle that they've maintained, so their falls risk is pretty much staying at the same level. So it's slowing down the decline more than adding. Whereas with the exercise, we can add. So Belinda's work, you can add. Whereas with just that, all we do is hold them where they are. But it still means they're living the same amount of time, but with fewer falls and fractures.
Yeah. So this is the message to people too. I don't want some of the younger people to go, okay, well, I don't need to exercise. I'm just going to eat my dairy. No, I think this is more for somebody who's really in a nursing home, or there's no way you're going to get them to exercise.
There's been a study called the Sunbeam Trial, and they did get them to exercise, and they did fall less.
I believe that, but I'm thinking of my father-in-law who's going to turn 90, and he doesn't leave the home. He has never exercised a day in his life. He's falling apart. And so there's no way I'm going to get him to exercise, but I could get him to eat some cheese, or he's French on top of it. So I'm just kind of thinking this is a really interesting study and can really be very helpful, especially for those people who cannot or will not. And okay, at least we have this, and it's something. But if you threw on the exercise piece, then boy, yeah, you're off to the races.
Absolutely, and you're 100% right. If someone's never exercised, and if they've not been brought up with it, then it's almost like it's not something you pick up in your 80s. You suddenly don't go, oh, I'm going to be a runner from now on. That's not to say people can't. And I love it when I see women that go through menopause, the kids have grown up, they're out of the house, and all of a sudden they've got this time and they start exercising. I love it, love seeing it. So it's not saying that you can't do it. It's not saying that you can't get the benefits of it. But I agree, if they're in their 80s, well and truly, they're unlikely to want to go, yeah, I'm going to start now.
They're unlikely to want to go, but you always see those exceptions on Instagram. They pop all over my feed. The 80-year-old who just started lifting weights. You're like, what? And there are exceptions right now, but it's not that you cannot. It's just that they tend to not want to, or they think it's unsafe, or they don't know how, or they don't have access. I mean, there's many reasons why, but it's never too late.
I teach a class, and I've got people that started in their 80s.
Really? Really, from that walking in the water class, or what's that class?
The water running class. I've got people that have multiple comorbidities, and the reason they took it up was because there's no impact involved, and they've actually improved. And some of them, there's one in particular, she has polymyalgia rheumatica, and when she's in the water, she can actually move. And her rheumatologist is going, look, I don't know what you're doing, but just keep doing it.
Amazing.
So they can. Yeah. And she took it up. She would have been like 80 when she started. And I just love that. I love teaching that, and I love assisting these people, and they're all so dedicated. It's fantastic.
Explain what it looks like, water running.
Yeah, so we're in a deep pool, so you don't touch the bottom of the pool. They wear, I don't when I'm doing it, a buoyancy belt. So the origins is rehabilitation for athletes. Okay, so an athlete has broken a bone or got a stress fracture, that's where it came from. So you can imagine they're in a deep pool. We normally take up 3 lanes wide so that we can run around in a sort of a big square thing. And you stay in the deep water. They've got a buoyancy belt, and basically you're just running in the water. So I'm really big on technique, so you're running. And basically they do the running, but then we do intervals, we do work with on the wall, we do work with kickboards, we do work with kickboards that are vertical, resistance. We do all types of things. So we put in some exercises in there to get some other parts of the body. So it's all about the posture, and it's teaching them the posture, but there's no impact. And that's the key thing about it, that they can do it. And it's beautiful. And when I asked the group, I said, right, okay, I just need to know, I'm out of interest, how many of you have arthritis? 80% of them go up, their hands go up, right? They've got arthritis, they've got it in their hands, so they can't use weights. They've got it in their knees, they've got it in their hips, they can't do these things, yet we can get them in water, they're buoyant, they're all shapes and sizes as well. And so all of a sudden they've got this capacity, and for me the key thing is the actual class is 45 minutes. I do 30 minutes of work, and it's hard work. I've built them up over the years, but what I'm getting at is on land, they could not get their heart rate up to that level where they can get cardiovascular improvements, but they can because they're buoyant. But they're still working. Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah. In the bone world, we're always so focused on strength and lifting heavy and impact. And you think about the people who just can't or won't. And it's better to do something than nothing. And you can still get loads of benefits from many other benefits that are for the body, and their health. And it's wonderful that they're doing that.
It's a combination thing, I think. So that in that case, but yes, you get them walking, so at least they're getting some kind of weight bearing. But at the gym where I teach, I love it. You see these people in the gym, they're well 60, 70, 80, and they're pumping iron. So it's fantastic. And I love the fact that people now have gone, I've got to look after my body, and I'm entitled to have a good, strong body so that I can continue to live the latter years of my life as well as I possibly can, which is what they're doing.
Yeah. And when I was going through my gerontology course, if you ask any older adult, what do you want? They want to be independent and they want to age in place.
Yes.
So if they want to be independent, age in place, well, then you need to be physically and mentally capable of doing that. And so this is why I encourage women who are listening now, who are maybe in their 40s and 50s, to protect their 80-year-old self. But you do it now because disease doesn't start at the diagnosis with Alzheimer's or a cardiovascular disease or osteoporosis, whatever you want. In your 80s, it starts decades ahead of time. And menopause is such an amazing opportunity to take this time to protect your future self. And day by day, you get there.
There's some really good literature when you said, even though this is off topic, the mental health and cognition. There's some great work that came out of, reported in the Lancet, and it looked at that, and they found that people who stay active keep their cholesterol lower in midlife, though. In midlife. So it's about midlife there, not necessarily so having a healthy weight, all those things in midlife. But interestingly, in later life, it was social connectedness that kept them less likely to get dementia. So with the class that I teach, they go out together. They'll go out and usually every quarter they'll have a lunch together. So it's that social connectedness as well. It's not just the exercise, but that part of it, which is as important, because if it's not fun, we don't do it.
Exactly. I'm a dancer, so I'm always telling people, like, dancing is one of the best things because you use your brain, because you can remember the steps and the choreography. You socialize and get your heart rate up. I mean, it depends what kind of dance you're doing, and you're getting strong. So I think it's such like a perfect aging exercise is dance.
You're having fun. That's the thing.
And you have fun.
You're having fun. So I think that ticks all the boxes. As long as you're not like me, I've run in a straight line for too much of my life to be able to pirouette sideways. I'll probably fall over.
But it's good to try. I took a ballet class for the first time after my hip replacements, and I'm not a ballerina at all. I mean, I'm more like the hip hop and the pop, and I like that stuff. But I was like, I'm going to try. And there's the social factor. I wanted to make friends, meet new people here. But my brain was on fire. She was like, in plie and lift and do this. And I'm like, which foot? My right? My left? It's been a while, and it's not my favorite one, but I could literally feel the neurons connecting and building, and it's so good for the brain. So I was thinking, even though I don't really like the class, I think I should really continue to go for my brain.
Mentally exhausted as you were physically exhausted. And as I said, because that's not my forte, I'm a straight line person, it's the same. I'll be going, their arms going that way and their legs doing that. Okay, I've got it. Oh my God, they've just changed. So, yeah, I'm useless. I'll stick
with it. But the good thing with learning something new, and I'm always a proponent of the lifelong learner, is that the learning curve is so steep in the beginning when you don't know, when you're just learning or you're just trying, or you've never lifted weights before, you've never done exercise. You get so many more gains than like you and me who've been training most of our lives. and that's a great benefit. They will see those results and feel it so much sooner.
Yeah, whereas for me, it's pretty hard to get that extra 30 seconds off a 1K climb because it's just not going to happen. Whereas you're 100% right. If you've not come from a running background, it's beautiful. And so it's rewarding. So there's instant really good feedback and reward back and you're achieving something. It's like, wow, that was fantastic.
Yeah. And you're very passionate about that, about helping women get into exercise, especially if they haven't for a while, or it resonates so well with you. I want to go back to this study. I have given you like 20 questions and I'm still in question number 1 with the dairy study, but I want to address the person who doesn't eat dairy for some reason or another. I mean, there's people who are intolerant, or they can't, or they're vegan, or I don't know. How are they what do they do?
Yeah, I think when you're younger, it may be easier because you can eat the volumes of food. But the data shows, so if you look at fractures and they compared omnivores, so they meat as well as everything else, versus vegetarians, which will have dairy and egg, and vegan, the risk of fracture was higher in the vegans and didn't differ between the vegetarians and the omnivores. So vegans have a harder time getting enough calcium and potential, unless they eat properly, getting enough of the right amount of protein. So I don't know what's going to happen in 50 years' time when this next generation of people that want to be vegetarian are vegetarian. I don't know the effect it's had on their bones during growth. We know milk avoiders have lower bone density in children and higher fractures. We know that from the data, but we've never really kind of had masses of people that are vegan.
Yeah.
So we don't know, but the literature shows that those that are vegan, so vegetarian was different. That was the same as eating meat. Because they're eating dairy, they're eating eggs, but the vegans had a higher fracture rate. So that's the data. When you comment about it, that's all we can say, because we've never done a head-to-head where we go, right, you're going to be a vegetarian for the next 50 years. Let's see what happens. We've never done it. It's never going to happen. So we can only look at prospective data. So they've watched people over years that are chosen vegetarians versus vegans versus omnivores.
Yeah. This is the crux of the problem, I think. Yeah, we don't really know. And to do that study for 50 years, it would cost a little bit too much. But what about, I know that somebody asked you this in one of your presentations, and I think it's right. The first thing I think somebody said when you decided to do this study was like, oh, these older adults, woof, their cholesterol is going to go up. You're giving them all these saturated fats. And tell us what happened there.
Nothing. Their cholesterol did not go up, because what you find is if they've done again trials where they've taken cheese and matched it to fat content to butter, and when they consume the butter, often they do crossover design, they consume it and then they have a washout and consume it. When they consume the butter, LDL and total cholesterol goes up. But when they consume the same amount of fat from the cheese, it didn't. And
what
our
about
data.
milk? And we're talking about full fat dairy.
Yeah,
right?
but it's mainly the fat content. So as we were discussing, it's the saturated fat content of our food that is going to increase the serum cholesterol. Mm-hmm. And so one of the issues now is, if you look at general diet, you're having this much from dairy, which has shown it actually doesn't increase. Unless you're having butter and cream, that's a separate story. But most of our saturated fat's coming from everything else. It's coming from the takeaway, it's coming from all that other stuff. So it's a bigger picture. But as I said, head-to-head, butter, cheese, the cheese had no effect, the butter increased it. So the extra dairy that we were giving them extra butter and cream. And also what we're doing is we're taking out things, like we're substituting. So the cakes, the biscuits, having that every day. They were eating on average, six discretionary foods, is what we call them. That's a food that's not part of your core food group. So that's things like party pies and biscuits and cakes and even things like salamis and all that stuff that's in there. So they might then go, okay, let's take out the cake, let's take out the dessert, so it's just jelly and cream, and let's give them a cheesecake. We made cheesecake from condensed milk and yogurt, okay? So now I've taken out all the fat from the cream and whatever else they're having, and I've substituted it with better quality fat, and plus they've got a whole dairy serve in there to go.
Wow, that's quite a lot of work. 7,000 people over the course of 2 years, and to get in there and make these changes. It's not like, oh, let's just put more cheese on the table. There was a lot of other work going behind the scenes to balance things out, not to give them a heart attack.
Yeah, we've got hundreds of recipes from it. We've got menus that we've been and we give them exactly what they need to do. So when you're making this mashed potato for your 100 residents, you need this much cheese to add into it. So it was actually really easy for them to do. So those resources were really valuable as well.
Okay. So if somebody's been following me more than a minute, they know I'm the one who's I may be a lean mass hyper responder. I eat some saturated fats and woof, my cholesterol goes to the roof, the LDL. And then when I take it out of my diet, or if I go non-fat yogurt, egg whites, like so boring, then it just comes down. And I'm like, it's not fair. I'm thinking I want to get the benefits of dairy. I love dairy and I'll deal with the non-fat. It just kind of sucks. But maybe it's a matter of replacing, although I don't eat that. I mean, maybe instead of avocado, if I want the cheese, then I got to balance things out. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do I...
The thing with cholesterol is a lot of the ability for us to deal with it metabolically is genetic. So that's why cancer runs in families. Dad had cancer and mum had cancer and I've got cancer, and it goes down. Versus the same with cardiovascular risk. It runs in families. So you think you've got two parents. And for myself, I've inherited my mother's side, which has issues with cardiovascular disease and stroke and heart attacks and all that, whereas my dad's side didn't. And it just happened to basically flip a coin. Which parent did you get it from? Of the siblings, I was the one that got mum's side. And so therefore, genetically, I just don't cope with, it doesn't matter if I eat next to no, like low fat everything, it will go down a tiny bit. But I can't, I'll never be down in that completely nothing risk phase. I'll never get down to there because genetically I'm just not designed to be down there. So what you do then is you make the best of what you got.
What is that?
Exercise. Okay. You eat as well as you can. If I was overweight and if I ate anything, like I was happy to do takeaway every day, mine would be higher than it is. But what I'm getting at is you kind of think you've got this genetic range, right? This is mine, which is still high. I'm never going to get down here. I just can't because genetically I can't. But if I let myself go, I can go up north. I can end up with really high cholesterol. That's out of control. That will increase my risks. So you've got a risk profile and you can either max it out by being completely unhealthy or you can minimise it as much as you can by doing the best you can. Best you can with what you got.
Yeah, and again, I get so stuck on chasing a number, like a DEXA or a cholesterol number, and I'm trying to saying, okay, reel back. It's one data point. So it's a matter of, okay, wait, am I putting myself at risk for something else? So do you yourself eat the non-fat dairy or lower cholesterol, saturated fat foods?
Yeah, no, I eat regular cheese. It doesn't matter. I'm actually a Swiss and a Jarlsberg person myself, but I do. When I was racing and it was so high, it was like, well, what can I do? So I did the absolute, zero fat everything. And the only kind of residual from that now is I still drink skim milk because I can taste the difference now. But otherwise, everything out, the cheeses, whatever, the yogurts, whatever, that's the only thing that's residual from historical, I've got high cholesterol. Yeah, so that was the only one, and it's because I like the taste of it, whereas a lot of people are the opposite and don't like the taste of it.
Yeah, you get used to it. And then I'm doing the goat yogurt on top of it. Non-fat goat yogurt. What a joy. But you do get used to it.
Yeah, whereas I just go, whatever the flavoured yogurt is, that's what I have. And that's the luxury if you exercise. You can, I wouldn't call it a treat, having fruit-flavoured yogurt, but you can do stuff. And the key thing with anything is if you're at a party and it's a birthday, of course you have some birthday cake. It's not about going, you can never have anything good again. It's about the balance. So the majority of the time you're eating well. If you look at the dietary guidelines, they say you're allowed 2 treats a day, up to. So
2 to 3.
Yeah,
what is
0 to 2. 0 to 2.
0 to 2.
So
what treat is a cookie? Donut?
Yeah, it depends on what it is. It could be, it's like a standard glass of wine, or it might be 2 small cookies or half a pie or something like that. So it's not saying you can never eat a crisp again, but don't eat it every day for a snack.
Yeah, that totally backfires when you say never again in my whole life.
Yeah, and it does. As soon as you deprive someone of something, it's like kids. You can't have it. What's the first thing they reach for? What they can't have. And it's the same with us. There's no good or bad food. It's more and less food.
Yeah. Oh, so, okay, I've got one last question before I let you go, because I think we need a part 2 because I only got through 2 questions now. All right. So my last question, we didn't even go into supplements or anything like that, which we could do a whole podcast on that. But I did want to pick your brain a little bit on strontium. It's a mineral supplement that some people take in quite high dosages, and that helps to increase the bone mineral density. But there's an argument that this falsely increases DEXA scores, and there's other issues. I'm wondering if you know anything about this mineral.
Yeah, so if you imagine, let's go back to high school, our periodic table. It's a heavier element. So therefore, when it embeds in bone, it's denser. So in terms of the actual mineral, so when the X-ray hits it, it's saying, wow, this bone's really strong. So it's actually the strontium because it's a heavier element. So the bone density will be higher, but the bone may not necessarily be stronger.
Really? Because doesn't it do the same thing as calcium? You're saying kind of fills the holes maybe, or?
It does. It kind of, you imagine it replaces some of the calcium, but because it's a heavier element, it comes across as the density of the bone is higher.
Yeah.
So it is, to a degree, a little bit of a false. The original strontium was in a strontium ranelate, and that was amazing. That was the first one that was a little bit anabolic, and it was this amazing drug, and it was like, wow, this is it. But it's been pulled off the shelf because it increases the risk of heart attack and a blood clot, which will be a stroke. So it got pulled from the market. The strontium citrate, which is what you get in a supplement, hasn't been well researched. So we don't have data to go, wow, that's as good as the ranelate, the strontium ranelate. We don't know. But it does give that false positive in the sense that because it's, and what you find is that once they stop taking it and it's removed from the bone, it'll go back to where it was. So it is a bit of a,
so those holes will still keep building.
Imagine I've got my 20 holes. And
I really like the whole analogy. I'm just going with that.
Like I've got a piece of Swiss cheese, it's got 20 holes in it, and the bone gets emptied out, refilled. And every time I refill it, I'm refilling it with the crystals that have calcium in it. So then I take a photo of that. And now I'm having my strontium. So half those holes have strontium in it. So they've got bits of strontium everywhere. It's heavier than calcium. So when I take my photo, the X-ray goes, wow, this is really thick and dense. But it's just the strontium. The bone, the structure of the bone is not changed. It's just the strontium. And what they say...
With calcium, it does? If it were calcium, that does change the structure of the bone?
No, neither. It's just, if you imagine, I've got a mesh, which is my collagen. And in that mesh, so if you imagine a bone with no... Great thing is, get a chicken bone, dip it in vinegar, right? Gets rid of all the mineral and you can bend it, right? So a bone's like a mesh. It's like a collagen protein mesh. And it bends. Right? It bends a lot. If I've got no mineral in it, I can bend it like that. Whereas once I start to put mineral in it, it toughens it up a bit. But it's just to bend a little bit, because if it was completely rigid, every time I landed on the ground, I'd just smash it. Yeah. So I've got a little bit of bend in a bone, tiny bit, tiny bit, right? Not too much. So the more, calcium that's in there, or the more whatever's in there, the rigider it gets. And
so then you're more at risk of shattering your bones because it's so stiff. Without that bend.
Yes. So the classic is there's a certain, with one of the drug treatments, people dig a hole, refill, right? And that's the way I keep that nice balance. Some people dig more holes and refill more than others, just genetically. So I've got someone who's genetically really slow, digs 4 holes and then refills 4 holes. So it's really slow. When we give them those drugs, it slows down the number of holes they dig. So now they're only digging 2 holes where we should be doing 20 holes, but they're only doing 2. And so the bone becomes that brittle, and it's called an atypical fracture. The bone just fractures because it can't repair itself. That's what the holes are for. Dig a hole, refill. Bit of a fracture, bit of a micro break in there. I get in there and I fix it up. That's our body fixing it. I can't fix it because I haven't got any holes.
So you want to have a few holes to give it that bend. Right?
You've got to have a bit to give it a bit of bend. If we don't have enough, so the classic is, you go back to rickets in the olden times, right? Yeah. Not enough vitamin D, so they're not actually putting the calcium in the bone because they're not absorbing it. So you've got this little baby and it's deficient, and then once it becomes a toddler, it starts to walk, the bones bend. So the classic photos, you've got those kids and they've got those bowed legs. It's because it's not enough in there. There's not enough mineral, so it's bending. So it's that lovely balance between, they call it, you need a bit of bend, so it's toughness, stiffness, but it's got to have absorption in there as well. So it's that lovely balance.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Because we're thinking, when you think of an osteoporotic bone, it's like a sponge, and you're like, oh wow, it has so many holes, whereas the healthy bone has fewer holes, but there's still holes.
Yeah, but if you imagine, so I've got a piece of bone, and we have little canals in them, right? And the canals is for the blood vessels and stuff to go through. So that canal, that's where I take bone from when I'm losing it. So I lose it. But if I've got a hole there and a hole there, and I'm losing, eventually it becomes a big hole, now I'm becoming porous. Yeah. So if I have enough of those big holes, I have enough big holes that the bone is becoming more fragile. So it's how to slow that down. So in our vertebrae, women, if you imagine I've got a vertebrae and that's the whole thing together, it takes from here, and what tends to happen is all this thins out and it perforates. So now I've got a hole in that vertebra. Whereas men tend to just thin it out. So it gets thinner and thinner, but it doesn't actually perforate. So there's that difference. So that's why you get women with the loss of height, the kyphosis, because the way we lose bone is a little bit different to the men.
Oh, We got to talk about this next time. The differences. Oh, wow. This is so important. I'm going to have to let you go because it's getting late there. And I would love to have you on for a part 2 so we can go through more nutrition and bones and bone health. And we pretty much exhausted the dairy thing. And if you can eat dairy, please go get your milk, your cheese, your yogurts. I'm a fan of cottage cheese. I love that. Very high protein.
My daughter loves it. Loves it.
That'll
High
be in
protein
your next
cheese. The more yellow, like that, like your Parmesan, more bang for buck because there's less fluid in it. So that's quite concentrated. Like a tablespoon of Parmesan is a whole serving of dairy. Whereas your cottage cheese, because it's white on this end, lots of protein, but not as much because there's lots of fluid in it. Yeah.
Ooh. Good news. Oh, great. You've got such great tips here. So before I let you go, I know you've got some interesting research as well that's coming out. Is there anything you'd like to share before I let you go?
Yeah, so what we're doing, it's in aged care again, is we're training chefs to do it themselves. And so really, whatever people often say, can what we do be repeated in the community? If their intake is of the same deficient level, like if their intake is low, around 600 milligrams and low 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, there's no reason why they can't benefit. The only thing I can't stop, so in aged care it's very controlled, the only thing I can't do in the community is if their carpet's frayed and they trip over it, I can't fix that. So the risks are slightly different when people are at home versus in the care, but there is no reason. But the reality is, you imagine how many people in the community I'd have to find to repeat the study I did in care. So it's going to be one of those trials that probably never, ever happens.
Interesting. Yeah, it is so different at home. Yeah, that's why we need the controlled environment. Why studying mice is different than human beings.
Yeah. And the other thing as well is in aged care, you've got to document the falls. Every fall's documented. If they find them on the floor, it's documented. Whereas if you phone someone, especially someone that might have cognitive impairment in a study, and you go, so did you fall this year? They go, oh, no, I was fine. But they could have fallen that many times. So either they've got to fill out a diary all the time. So it's a lot harder to get people to remember that they're falling. I mean, now with technology, you could probably put the watches now, you can have them with accelerometers. So you'd have to buy a watch for everyone. So every time they fell over, it tells us. But again, you know what I mean? You think of how many watches I have to buy to be able to do that.
Exactly. We need somebody to fund Apple Watch to fund these things.
I didn't say it, you said it.
Yeah, it's what we need. It's so much money goes into this, but it is such important research. And I think that as the population is aging, we need more data, and we certainly need more science and more research on older adults, right? So it's already difficult enough being a woman, but now if you're an older woman, you even have less research done. But you've got the Healthy Aging Project. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so if you look at the world population, you've got Japan's one of the countries with the greatest lifespan, and Australia's right up there. So we're actually looking at what are the characteristics of people that are aging in both the countries, but we're looking at it both from a cognitive, a physical, a social, quality of life, diet, the whole thing. So what are the key features of these two nations? And once we know those features, you can then do your promotion and education to get others to adopt whatever it is that it is. What's the perfect way of staying older? We know generally from it, sleep well, don't smoke, don't drink or drink a bit, 3 meals a day, physical activity, but there could be other things, and social connectedness is one of them, and I don't think we value that enough. So it's about learning what are the best combinations to keep people not only living longer but healthy. It's about healthy lifespan, not just adding years on. Because if you ask older people, we do it in a nursing home, they don't want to live longer, they want to live better.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a word I just learned called peak span. I've been talking about health span, but peak span is being at your peak as long as you can in a good condition, right? Because it's like health span to next level.
There's some term it healthy lifespan or healthy. I've heard peak.
Yeah. There's a research study. I just shared this in my newsletter, and it talks about peak span, and they are studying peak span so to help older adults reach their peak. Not because we peak usually 2030 when you talk about physiology, right? But let's move the needle over.
If someone's not been active, as an example, as a youngster, they can peak later in life.
Yeah,
but if you're a real champion as a youngster, I think there's no other direction.
Yeah. Well, there's room for everything. And I want to thank you so much for your time. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with you again. I've learned so much. This is such a fascinating study that you did in terms of just bringing a couple of foods in and lowering the fracture risk, which I think is really such an important marker. But so many other things we brought into this conversation. I love the research you do. I love this healthy aging project. It's so up my alley. If you need any support with that, always just tell me, and I'm on it. And I want to thank the listeners too for listening to the end here. We wouldn't be here without you. We so appreciate your time and value it very, very much. If you have questions and you want to reach out, I will have a link to Sandra's email. And yeah, get on that dairy if you can and exercise, and it's never too late. And I hope you had some takeaways. And thank you, Sandra, for your time, and we'll see you next time.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me on the show.